President Trump has been calling for the need to renegotiate or scrap the free trade deal between the two sides for some time now. Naturally, matters pertaining to the economy is expected to be in the front burner. Unshin explores the significance of the FTA as well as how deep the discussions could go.
On the day of his inauguration, leaders around the world called to congratulate Korean President Moon. And one of those calls came from Washington. President Trump wished the new South Korean leader the best in his new role, and also brought up the two leaders' first business agenda, the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. Often referred to as the KORUS FTA, it came into effect in March 2012 to boost business opportunities by widening each country's access to the other's products and services. But President Trump has repeatedly said the deal needs to be renegotiated or possibly even terminated, calling it a disaster and a job killer. The numbers, however, say otherwise. Last year, the U.S. Department of Commerce ranked Korea as the fourth largest foreign provider of jobs in America, creating over 45,000 positions since the KORUS FTA came into force.
With the boost in foreign direct investment, we created many jobs in the U.S. The increase in Korean investment has boosted the American economy through the direct employment of U.S. citizens and through the money spent by Korean companies to operate in the U.S. All this is from the agreement.
Experts agree the U.S. dropping out of the trade pact is rather unlikely, but given the circumstances, the accord could undergo some changes. Numerous U.S. officials seem to be pushing for that option. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer calling the deal troubling.
The United States has essentially two complaints about the Korean trade agreement. Number one, initially when we negotiated that, United States was hoping that trade surplus would go up to about $10 billion, but it turned out to be -3, so that's one of the problems. The other complaint the United States has is non-tariff barriers. There are a lot of non-tariff barriers which is preventing the United States from exporting more to Korea. So I think at the end of the day, U.S. wants to see Korea importing more and narrowing the trade deficits.
Over the past 5 years, Korean exports to the U.S. have been growing quickly by a yearly average of 3.4%, while American exports to Korea have slightly decreased. But a closer look reveals across numerous industries that the U.S., too, has seen benefits, which experts say will broaden in the years to come.
Without the trade pact, Korean manufacturers would pay tariffs of 1.6 to 1.7% when shipping to the U.S., and Korea would charge American companies about 4%. The FTA has brought tariffs down close to 0%, so in fact, the U.S. has saved more than Korea.
Before heading to D.C. for the two-day Seoul Washington summit, President Moon left room for a possible renegotiation of the trade pact, saying that if deemed necessary, talks can be held to revise the KORUS FTA to increase mutual benefits. But when it comes to a trade deal as big as this one, any decision will be made through a long, careful process, going far beyond the two leaders themselves.
Because this meeting is kind of at the summit level of meeting, I don't think they can negotiate, very concrete agenda. So I think best result would be to agree on mutual abolishment of such FTA is not an option at all.
And experts, both in Korea and the U.S., stress that if a renegotiation were to proceed, it would have to be done bilaterally, with both countries on the same page.
If you talk to economists like myself, we have for free trade, and we don't want barriers, whether it's monetary or non-monetary. The more important issue is establishing trust between the two presidents. I think especially Mr. Trump, he probably wants to gauge whether President Moon is with him or with, closer to China. The bottom line is that establishing trust, that probably is the most important issue and then task at this meeting.
Trade between the two nations is estimated to be worth over $100 billion. And beyond the money involved, the FTA reflects a strong commitment by Korea and the U.S. to their alliance. based on their political, cultural, and historical bonds. So rather than putting limits on these exchanges, experts advise that any decision be reached methodically and on the basis of mutual understanding. It would need to take into account both economic gains and values that don't come with a price tag. Unshin, Arirang News.